This project began as an exercise I did many years ago when I was fresh out of school and didn't have much of a portfolio. I picked a favorite book and designed a cover for it using cut paper. Years later, I decided to create a digital project out of this by using Adobe Illustrator Image Trace to convert the paper art into vector art. That gave me the background. I wanted the title to have an interesting interaction with the background, so I used live paint. DL4B requires that you use a photograph. Do a simple graphic conversion to vectors using image trace in Adobe Illustrator, and then make the title interact with the background in some way using live paint. Another requirement is that the image must be full bleed, meaning that the image goes all the way off the page on all four sides. To be printed that way, you need to set up bleeds in your document. Another requirement is the submission of your AI file and a PDF, which includes bleeds and printer's marks. I'll demonstrate. I have chosen the Porsche car picture from the image set provided for DL3. The book is called Cannonball, World's Greatest Outlaw Road Race. It was written by Brock Yates, who was for many years the executive editor of Car and Driver magazine. Later, a movie was made based on this, starring Burt Reynolds. The first thing I want to do is establish my image trace. This is my source image. This is a 30 color conversion. With a little experimentation, I found that I could get down to 13 colors, 25% on my paths, 72% corners, turn off preview a minute, 72% corners, and 40 on my noise level, eliminating some of the smaller artifacts in the image and also probably smoothing out some of the rougher shapes. I'm going to use the abutting method to create cutout paths rather than having them overlapping or stacked. And I will not ignore white. I'll allow it to include any white in the image. I might try snap to lines and see if that helps my image quality any. I'm going to turn on the preview. I was at 1,142 paths. I'm now down to 836 paths, and also a considerable drop in my number of anchor points. And this has the tonality I want for the ad. It has enough interesting things happening in the sky that I can do my title interaction, but it's a somewhat simplified image. So I'll expand that. This is an 8.5 by 11 page. This isn't what's required for the project. The project requires a 6 by 9 page. That's a rather standard size for some paperback books. So Command N, new document, and using inches, I'll say 6 inches wide, 9 inches tall. And this is where I have to add bleeds. The industry standard bleed, any print shop in the United States, probably in some other Western countries as well, the most common bleed dimension is 1/8 of an inch. And you can type in 1/8, and I think that works. Yes, it does. 0.125 inch, that's the decimal. If you know your picas and points, in points, that would be 9 points, or in picas, that would show as 0 P9, 0 picas, 9 points. I'll leave it at inches because we're talking about inches here for the project. So 6 by 9 inches and a 0.125 bleed. I'll use RGB color because I'm not really doing process printing. And when I do process printing, I can actually convert this to 4-color process when I create the PDF. Raster effects, there shouldn't be any, but I'll set those to medium anyway, so that I don't generate a lot of extra data in my file. Preview mode by default, and I'll create that. So there's my document, and you see this red line that is 1/8 of an inch away from my page edge, and that's the bleed line. So any art that I do, if I'm going to have an industry acceptable bleed, I have to have my art go all the way out to that line or beyond. I have my conversion here. I'll Command C, copy, and on my new page, Command V, paste. My image doesn't fit my book cover, so I'll have to do some things to get this to be a full bleed image, and hopefully without distorting the car. My layout is 6 by 9 inches. My image is over 6 inches wide and a lot less than 9 inches tall. Hold the Shift key to constrain and scale this up so that it bleeds off the page a bit. And it still doesn't fill the layout, but what I can do is the trick I showed you earlier on 4A, which is take the direct select tool and grab some of these anchor points by dragging across them, and then use the up arrow on the keyboard to push those up. Select another group and push a little more. Select another group and push some more. And another group. This space in the middle seems really big now, and I know I want to have something breaking up the background where my type will be. Command Y, go into the wireframe or drawing mode and drag across these and delete that shape. And then I'll pull some of these anchor points over this way to kind of get that to flow with the other shapes better. And Y, go back to preview mode, because in preview mode, I'll be able to take my knife and cut through this background shape, making some new shapes. With this selected, I'll double click on the fill swatch on my tool palette and change that to a lighter color. I'll just drop the cyan, magenta, and yellow a bit. I just might take this one and make it a little darker, so I've got some contrast here by copying this color. And then this one a little darker. Just set it about 50% to each of those. Oops, not the one I wanted. I thought I had this one selected. Okay, so I'm going to copy this. That one, copy this. Okay, so there's my sky. Now the bottom. This is a little trickier. I have to be careful not to grab part of that gray shadow of the car. Move this over. It's a little bit smaller. And take my direct select tool, drag across here, avoiding the gray of my shadow, and drag that down a little. Select a lower set of points, go down a little more, down a little more, and just continue stretching these out. And Y, go into wireframe, and then I could just grab random points in here. That one, move those down a little bit more. And I don't really care what this looks like or represents. I want to have something that fills out the space and looks like it goes with the image. Command Y, got a gap in there. Get that anchor point there, move that down. And I'll just stretch this a little more. Shift key to constrain and grab the bottom line and pull the whole set. That little white spot there. The little white spot bothers me. Direct select, grab this line right here. And just pull it over so it covers the white. Okay, that'll do, because nothing important has to happen down there really, except that the author's name has to stand out. I've almost got enough to cover that space. I'll get out of the group by double clicking anywhere off of the artwork. Using my main selection tool, I'll select the group, hold the shift to constrain, and scale this a little bit larger. And I think I want to move this down. I think I need just a little more sky at the top to bleed. Okay, so that will be my cover art. I need some type with that. And over here, you can see that I've already set the title, Cannonball, World's Greatest Outlaw Road Race, Brock Yates, the author. I'm going to take a closer look at this. You see it twice here. Why do you see it twice? Well, let's go into the character palette, Command T, and I have it scaled to a strange size. Maybe I'll make this exactly 64 point. And I did that just by, I didn't click on anything here. I just selected the type, and with that selected, hit the up arrow and it will advance that, or you can use the little clicker thing here. I don't care about the leading because it's only one line of type. Normally I don't want to see these parentheses, which means that it's auto lead, and professionals never use auto lead in any final file. Okay, so what do we have here? This is auto kern, which is okay for body composition or body text. If you think of a page, you know what a headline is, and maybe you know what a header and a footer are. Those are things about, say, a magazine that are at the top or the bottom of the page. The top of the page is the head, the bottom of the page is the foot, and the middle is the body. So when we talk about text or paragraph composition, we're usually talking about body copy, the text that is in the body of the page. For body copy, auto is adequate for the current setting. Metrics is adequate for body copy. For headlines or other display composition, you usually want optical. So this is auto. This is metrics, which is similar to auto. And this is optical. And I don't know about you, but I can see clearly that this is better spacing than that one. The one thing that bothers me is the word space. And the way you change word spacing, let me do this here. I'll make this optical. And you can see this one actually changed. This one still has a large word space. And what I did on the one above is selecting the type. I went into the paragraph palette, and the options for the paragraph palette include justification. And in justification, you can control word spacing, letter spacing, and glyph scaling. Now, glyph scaling is usually a bad idea. So I'm going to leave the glyph scaling at 100% minimum, 100% maximum, and 100% desired, meaning I don't want to distort the type. Word spacing, default word spacing is okay for paragraph text, especially if it's flush left or flush right or justified, where the desired value is 100%, and most of the time that's fine. For justified composition, where you have both sides of a paragraph go straight up and down or align to the margin, that's justified. These default settings of 80% minimum and 133% maximum are actually too wide a spread. We'll talk about that later on type. But for a headline, I want a lot less than 100%. And I'm going to set the minimum down to 50, even though this is not justified and the minimum and maximum don't make any difference at all. If I want to have some freedom in what I set the desired value to, I need to lower the minimum. I can then set my desired to, say, 75, which is lower than the 80 that was the minimum. The maximum I don't care about. It could be 100. Turn on the preview and you can see that looks a little better. And you know what? 70% might even look better than that. Letter spacing, this actually comes out a little tight for something set in all caps. So I might first raise my maximum because my desired can't exceed my maximum. Say I raise my desired to my maximum to 40. I can then make my desired 25. That's too much. Maybe 10. Okay, 10 I think is comfortable spacing for a display headline in all caps in this particular font. You can't assume that these settings apply to every font or every size of type that you might use. situations change, fonts change, the characteristics of them affect what decisions you make in spacing. So I'll say okay. This one I think is a little tight. So, and again, it has no word spaces, so I don't have to change that. But I would like to probably increase my letter spacing a little bit. And turn on the preview, and that might be too much. I'll go 5%. World's Greatest Outlaw Road Race. Again, I don't like the word spacing. And I think the letter spacing might be a little tight for something this bold. But before I do that, I'd better make sure that I have optical kerning. Yes, I think that's a little tight for letter spacing. So again, on my paragraph palette, justification, I'm going to loosen that up, maybe 10%, but that means I have to raise the maximum to more than 10, or it won't allow me to change the desired to 10. And that looks better to me. Okay. Now that I have those, I'm going to copy those over to my document. I drag across these to select both of them, hold the Shift key and add the author's name, copy, and go to my new document, Command V, paste. Okay, I think I'll, on my align palette, select align to artboard and center that name on the artboard, and I'll center the title on the artboard, and it looks like I've got a title that's a little too big. Hold the Shift key to constrain and scale this down this way, or I could do that by going to my character palette and increase the type size or decrease the type size as I need to fit. Now, I can't do margin guides on this like I can in InDesign. InDesign is set up more for publication work, so of course you would be thinking about margins. Illustrator is set up for illustration, so they don't really think about margins. But I could add guides at 1/2 inch. I might go 3/8 of an inch. So 3/8 of an inch, and then over here I need to be 3/8 of an inch less than 6 inches. So that would be 5.625, 5/8 of an inch. Open up this one, which stays open. 375, 5.625. I don't really care about the top and bottom margins because I know I'm going to leave a wide space on both of them, but you might want to set those anyway. So perhaps 3/8 from the top, which, and you know, I dropped it arbitrarily. I can use the arrow on my keyboard to click up to the next 1/8 of an inch value automatically, and that's 0.375. And I could drag one down here, and probably that one I would want at 1/2 inch, so I maintain that larger margin at the bottom that we have talked about before, and that would be 8.5 inches. Aesthetically, I might go by thirds on where I actually place this stuff. 1/3 of 9 inches is 3 inches, so that's at 3 inches, and this one will be at 6 inches. That might be at 6 inches, 6 inches Y. Again, I'm just using the down arrow on my keyboard, up and down arrows on my keyboard to get this to 6 inches. Is this one still a 3? Oh, that was 3x, which means nothing in a horizontal guideline. I'll get that one to 3 inches. Okay, so there's my cover divided into thirds. My cover is now divided into thirds, and I can use that to decide how I want to position things. I see my automobile is pretty close to the middle of the page. It's a little below center. I kind of like that though. And my author's name, I could put that, say, centered in the bottom third, which would be about there. So say the center of that would be at 6 plus 1.5, 7.5 inches. Eyeballed it pretty good. The center of that would be here. And maybe this would be at 1.5 inches. And this is too big. I could put this on 2 lines. I like to point out, let me go show you hidden characters. Command Option I or Control Alt I. And these little blue dots represent word spaces. And it's an idiosyncrasy of Illustrator that you won't find in InDesign, because InDesign is designed for handling text. In Illustrator, a space will throw off the centering of a line of text. So if I delete that, you can see that moved. This symbol here means a soft return. This is a hard return where you just hit the return key, indicates the end of a paragraph using, it's called a pilcrow or a paragraph mark. And if I want to have a new line that's not a new paragraph, hold the shift key and then hit the return. And that's the symbol, which means it's a new line, but it's not a new paragraph. And then I might, if I'm using that on 2 lines, I might want to reduce the leading to at least say solid, which would be 36 on 36. Or I could go to what we call negative leading, where the lead is less than the type size, and make it 32. There, 32. A little tight. I think I'm going to make that 34. Now, is this still centered on the page? Centered. A little big, but that's okay. It's going a little bit into my margin. In order for the type to interact with the background using Live Paint, it has to be converted to objects or outlines or Bezier curves or paths. And the way to do that is Command-Shift-O, outlines. You now see the type defined by Bezier curves as it actually is defined in the font file. Command-Z, undo. I'm going back to type. The reason I do that is because you have to make all of your type decisions and your positioning decisions before you do the next step, which is Live Paint. So if I want this to follow a path instead of being on a straight line, let's say smooth that out a little bit. Let's say I want a path like this. Double click on that to select the whole thing. Click 3 times, I think. Command-C, copy. Use my type on path. This is not required, but if you want to play with type on path, this is something you can do. And paste that in there. Use the handles to get that centered on the path. Maybe I want it to go this way. And then Command-Shift-R, right align this type and put it over here at the margin. Maybe I like it like that. I think I would. Okay, so those are decisions I have to make before I Command-Shift-O, convert it to outlines, because I can't do any editing of type. I can't change the typeface. I can't change the letter spacing unless I want to move these as individual objects manually, like I'm working with metal type. I can't do any of that once I've converted it to an outline. And I especially can't do it after I have applied Live Paint. Move this headline off of here. At this point, it would be a good idea to save your file. Command-Shift-S, save as, your last name, DL4B. And you might want to put draft. Something you can save it to so that if you don't like what happens after this, you can go back to before the point that you combined the title and the background. Once you've combined them, it's very hard to do any editing. If we present these in critique and someone suggests to you that the headline should be higher, lower, left, right, different typeface, this is the point where you can change that. After we do this next step, you would have to remove the background and redo it.